here. Thanks for inviting me out. Just before we start, like if I can make a suggestion for the future, like we might consider doing these outside, just saying, but that's up to you. All right, so of course, I'm sure everybody here is aware of the fact that the last 2 decades have been revolutionary in terms of detection of planets around other stars. So our count, I've lost count, to be completely honest, of how many exoplanets there are now. It's 4,000 or something like that, so we have been clearly winning on the exoplanet front. And in the meantime, in the solar system, we have been losing. Okay, and in 2006, we went from 9 planets to 8 planets with the demotion of Pluto. So today, I want to talk about how to make the solar system great again and return it to its former 9-planet glory. Right? So, what is staggering is that the solar system has had literally 2 additions, 2 planetary additions, 2 legitimate planetary additions in the entire history of humankind, right? Because everything out to Saturn, you can just see with the naked eye. So the Greeks and Romans just knew about everything out to Saturn. And the first addition of a planet to the solar system came right around 1776, towards the end of the Revolutionary War, when Herschel announced the discovery of an object which was very, very slowly moving across the night sky. So Herschel was exceedingly meticulous in the way that he observed. He just observed every night and drew everything he saw every night, right? So it was because of that consistency that he was able to note that this particular dim star was slowly moving across the night sky. And so he said, "Oh, wow, this has got to be this has got to be a planet." And what was immediately realized is that the particular star he was referring to had been observed before many, many times, including by Galileo himself. So the orbit of this new object was immediately reconstructed, right? So they knew what was going on. And by the way, Herschel, being a English character, decided to kind of cheer up the king, who was kind of depressed at the time because he was kind of losing, and said, "We'll name this planet George." Okay, so we'll have Jupiter, Saturn, and George. And that actually persisted for about 50 years, after which, just like whatever the equivalent of IAU, at the time said, "There's a terrible name for a planet, right? Let's instead call it Uranus." So that was the story of how George was discovered. Now, what was interesting is that almost immediately, astronomers realized that something was wrong with the orbit. And this is a slide from the memoirs from 1821 of Alexis Bouvard. Alexis Bouvard was the director of the Parisian Observatory, and he took it upon himself to kind of collect all the legacy observations of Uranus and put them together in a table and point out, kind of, compile the data set, so to speak. And I don't speak French, but you can clearly tell that something is wrong with the orbit because there's sines and cosines, right, over here, and there's a table over there with pluses and minuses, so it's cool. And also I've highlighted the word Uranus to just demonstrate that I'm on the right page. So what evidently Bouvard writes about in here is that Uranus is not where it should have been, right? The perturbation theories the thing to do if you were a mathematician at the time was to construct kind of perturbative, solutions for the motions of planets, and Uranus was not observed where it was supposed to be. And so in here, on this page, Bouvard speculates that there's 2 solutions. Being a good theorist, he proposed number 1, that the data is crappy and should not be believed, right? And he said on the off chance that the data is right, then what this suggests is that there exists an additional object beyond the orbit of Uranus, which is causing the perturbation, causing Uranus to veer off course. So the promise of that data set, and remember that was 1821, took a couple decades for it to really come to fruition, and the character which is typically credited with the mathematical discovery of Neptune is Urbain Le Verrier. So Le Verrier did a extremely careful and just remarkably complicated calculation to demonstrate that you could explain the anomalies in the Uranian motion with the existence of an additional planet in the solar system. When I was an undergrad, I went to UC Santa Cruz, and I lived in kind of shaky part of town, so I can spot a gangsta from far away. So I kind of know to not make eye contact, and this is, I mean, Le Verrier. It's clearly has all the signs because he's got his bling, right, that he's wearing on the outside. His stage name is Urban, right? Yeah, what a guy. So, I like to, you can download Le Verrier's manuscript online, and it is totally unreadable. But it is interesting to just scroll through it because it's staggering just how much calculation went into that discovery. What is even more intriguing, perhaps, is that when Le Verrier was done with this calculation, which was in 1846, he went to the Parisian Observatory and gave this talk where basically he provided the coordinates for this elusive, invisible planet to try and cheer up the observers to get them to come out and confirm his calculations.